now today, we have Cameron Winklevoss here, Tyler Winklevoss. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So, first things first, let's get down to business here. I want to ask this crowd, who here has invested, bought any sort of cryptocurrency? Raise your hand. Okay. Excellent. Okay. That's great. So basically, we have a lot of people who obviously understand how this world works, but for those who are new and getting your introduction for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about how it works and what Gemini is?
Gemini is an exchange and custodian, so you can basically go to Gemini.com or download our mobile app on the Apple or Google Play Store and basically buy, sell, and store cryptocurrency.
Excellent. And if someone wanted to understand what cryptocurrency is as it relates to, say, a credit card or cash or a checking account, Tyler?
I'd say it's internet that's built for, money that's built for the internet. Previous forms of money like credit cards, ACH were built by bankers before the internet existed. So it's a square peg round hole to get them to sort of work. PayPal does a good job of sort of skinning its sort of shell over that legacy banking system, but it's still sort of going over telcos versus like Skype and voice over IP. It's voice packets over the internet. Cryptocurrency is money over IP. It's data packets over the internet that allows you to basically send value as easy as you send email using the same type of mechanisms of computers talking to each other that email uses. So that was sort of the aha moment and breakthrough moment for us. So this was built by the same type of engineers that built the internet, not bankers before the internet. So it's like, okay, that was kind of like a big moment for us. And the rest is sort of history.
So the new thing is, well, I guess you guys were here at South by Southwest, what, 3 years ago, right?
I think in 2016.
Yeah, and the company was brand new. It wasn't even a year old. Now you guys are back, and you've got this mobile app. And it's definitely getting some attention, partially because you had this big ad campaign that is running in New York City about how the revolution needs rules. There has been some pushback because some folks in the community say, look, there actually already are rules. And what you're asking for is maybe a little bizarre. How would you respond to that? What are you guys trying to do here with the mobile app?
So the protocols have rules based on math and cryptography, but the rules really, what we're talking about is the humans who deal with the value on top of the protocol. So we're a New York trust company. We're regulated as a trust company to protect your value, and that's usually where the problems happen. It's not at the protocol level, it's at the company level. Yeah, so we're looking to regulate or bring rules to the entrepreneurs who build companies that store your digital assets and secure your value. And so every Bitcoin issue has never been a Bitcoin problem. It was a company built on top of Bitcoin, like Mt. Gox, or recently there was a Canadian exchange that lost the private keys in a murky way because there wasn't enough internal controls, there's not enough regulatory oversight. And usually in financial markets, you build trust by having regulatory oversight, someone looking over your shoulder, making sure you do what you do. We get examined by the New York Department of Financial Services usually once a year. It lasts 6 weeks, so 5 examiners will sit in our offices and make sure we're doing what we say we do. It's the same thing with audited financials and things like that. Who will guard the guards themselves? And you want to have like a couple of layers of checks and balances, and that's what regulation brings, and that's worked really well in financial markets. And the healthiest markets in the world today, outside of crypto, are the ones that are most thoughtfully regulated, like the U.S. equities market, the U.S. derivatives market. So that's what I bring to. Yeah, U.S. equity is probably the most heavily regulated market in the world, and also thriving, right? You can't really point to a market that's thriving that isn't rules-based, that has regulatory oversight. It just does not exist.
When you guys, and I know this was long before you started Gemini, but when you saw Mt. Gox and you saw the issue where the keys were lost, what did you think at the time? What ran through your head as you're observing this news event that you're clearly, you had invested at that point, I believe?
Yeah, so we ended up buying a lot of Bitcoin on Mt. Gox, so we kind of grew up in the Wild West of crypto, experienced it firsthand, and we also had to store our crypto, and we basically took our private keys, cut them into pieces, and stored them in secure locations all over the country. We like lived on planes for the better part of a week. It was like sort of mission impossible, carrying like value and private keys all around the country to store it. But we're like, most people aren't going to do that. if they want to get into crypto. So buying on Mt. Gox was scary, and then you had to figure out how to store it. It's like once you have the gold bars, you have to then secure it, and if you store it in your house, that's kind of scary because you've got to, buy safe, and people could try and rob your house. So
Take the safe.
yeah, so it was a real problem.
It comes in with a pipe wrench.
These are things I think about.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, it was a scary time, and it kind of informed us that in order for this thing to grow, we've got to basically build trust, and Gemini's chief product is really trust. Trust is our product.
the tech community has really been through a lot when it comes to trust. There have been many major violations over the past couple of years, obviously led in part by Facebook. And I wonder, how do you build a product that someone can trust when you've got the issues at Facebook? You have hacking happening literally everywhere, and you also have a very muddied history when it comes to Mt. Gox and other issues as it relates to crypto.
I think it starts by doing what you say you're doing, and just being honest about that. And it's built slowly over time, day in, day out. The little things and how you message your customers, how you treat your customers. So it kind of starts there. We're only about a 3.5-year-old company, though we started building about a year before we launched because we waited to get our trust company license in New York. We did not want to launch without a license. We didn't want to, ask for forgiveness. Our motto is ask permission, not forgiveness. And I think we're the only crypto company in the world that waited to get our license before we operated. All of our competitors were still operating, or and there's still a lot of unregulated exchanges overseas. But that's been our sort of our mantra and ethos, that in order to build the future of money, you've got to build trust, because at the end of the day, we're talking about value. You wouldn't store your money in an unlicensed, unregulated financial institution. It would never cross your mind. And yet in crypto, people seem to be doing it a lot, or they're not sure who's regulated, because some people overstate their regulation or their oversight or their insurance policies or this or that. And I think it starts with the simple things of doing what you're saying you're doing, not overstating, not misstating, and just starting with very fundamental stuff that builds trust. And it's sometimes the little things. It's how you describe your product.
Give me one specific example.
Let's see. So
Thank you.
I think, for example, we have an insurance policy on our hot wallet, all the crypto that's in online wallets, and it only covers that. And so we're just very crisp and clear about what it covers and what it doesn't cover. We don't sort of just make blanket
And do you feel
statements.
that users and people who are using Gemini, can they easily see that, or is it lost in that 55-page terms of service?
So they can read it on our blog, and we try to make our blog plain English, just really conversational and approachable and accessible, because I think there's this mystery around crypto that it's not accessible. People, they believe in the promise and they understand what it's going to do, but they're not sure how do I engage in a safe way, and they just assume. And so when we ran our advertising campaign in New York in January, and the revolution needs rules, crypto out chaos, we talked to a lot of people on the street, and they believed in crypto, they just weren't sure how to get in and engage with it. And a lot of them were like, oh, I'm going to actually go to Gemini, or go start thinking about this. I'm going to talk to my son. My son's been saying we should invest in crypto for the better part of the last 5 years, and now I'm going to actually re-engage and talk to him about it and understand it. So it starts with simple things like that, and a lot of it's education and just engaging with customers in an accessible way. So
It's also talking with regulators and helping shape thoughtful regulation through
What have those
education.
conversations been like?
They're good. I mean, in New York, they're very receptive, right? They believe in the merits of the innovation and came up with licensing framework called BitLicense. We're actually in New York Trust, we're under New York banking law, but we're the most regulated exchange and custodian in the world. But you won't know what the conversation is like if you don't pick up the phone and engage. And a lot of companies go offshore, they don't engage, they're anti-regulation. But we believe in this, and history has shown that thoughtful regulation is really important. And I think in the US at least, most regulators are very open-minded to the technical merit of this, just like the internet. We think this is the internet of money. It's as big and as powerful, maybe more exciting the first 25 years of the internet, the next 25 years with crypto could be even larger. So I think there's a receptive audience out there, but you got to start with the conversation, and we embrace regulation and doing things the right way. It's not necessarily the fastest way. We say, we joke, we're trying to be the fastest tortoise in the race. We're not really playing the offshore, get rich quick, for a limited time only until enforcement actions come. We're here for the long haul. So that's our philosophy, and that's been our DNA and our culture from day one. Our first blog back in 2014, we could literally, and we have basically repurposed it, and it's the same message. And like Kevin said, what we said then is true to what we say today, and that hasn't changed. And you build that over time, day in, day out. Whether it's blogging about your products, what you're going to do, not flip-flopping back and forth, saying yes to this, no to that. It seems really straightforward. I don't know why it's so difficult.
Well, I think it's because the building's being built around you as you're living it. The home's being built, and so
So just don't say anything until you're ready. that's one option.
Don't have an occupancy until your certificate of occupancy.
Right. But right now we're seeing sort of a retroactive attempt to regulate some tech companies, and we see Senator Elizabeth Warren, who I believe is here tomorrow, who's talking about regulating big tech. And I know that crypto is one small part of this bigger universe here, but when you see proposals and ideas coming from Washington to regulate big tech, what do you think? Do you think it's reasonable what is happening in Washington right now? Because frankly, there hasn't been much until basically the beginnings of this presidential campaign.
So crypto deals with money and value, and we've regulated that as a country for a long time. So we sort of fit into a place that's already been regulated. This idea of data cartels or companies controlling so much of people's data is kind of a new thing, right? And the internet was supposed to, in theory, be open. And then it basically became 5 companies, like the FANG companies, all the data sort of, went in. And that's sort of how it's come, over the last at least 10 years, it's really kind of accumulated into these companies. So it's an area that hasn't been regulated. There isn't a previous framework about this. Data wasn't online before the internet, and then the internet was this open thing that no one company was supposed to control so much. Now that's the case, so it's retroactively looking at the problem. But regulation is one way to attack it. The other way is innovation. And cryptocurrency creates decentralized networks that are hard for companies to control at the application layer, but really the value accrues at the protocol layer, and the people who buy into the network and buy Bitcoin get the rewards of taking the risk. So I think that engineers are trying to fix this problem as we speak, both inside and outside of those companies. And maybe regulation will help, but I don't know.
When Microsoft and Netscape got into their suit, by the time that the antitrust suit played out, Google had already come and sort of eaten Microsoft lunch, and the market sort of solved the problem. It was way faster than the actual government or court system. So that may be the case here, but data is important to protect and valuable, personally identifiable information, PII. That's one of the things that we work very hard to protect, the information of our customers, because we have a lot of information on it. We have to know our customers. So I think it does make sense to have some thoughtful regulation on some level when you are storing information about people, as long as it's thoughtful and we can innovate and build on top of it.
So you feel like your personal information protection is strong?
Yeah, the financial services world, it's very strong. Breaches and disclosures must be made. It is very important. We saw that with Experian, and there's been major breaches. There's the Target breach and out there. So in the financial services world, if you're a bank and you have a breach of information like that, you have a duty to disclose, and it's a very important part of your regulatory framework and regime.
So interacting with that world and being very much a part of it, what is your advice to a company that is having real problems with that right now? What's your advice to your former Harvard colleague, Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he's going through a lot of stuff right now about privacy. What would you say, if you were sitting here, what would you say to him?
I think he's got a lot of good advisors around him, and I think he's a good boss.
You guys are a really key part of the internet community. Surely you
I mean,
have
they're
a thought
looking
on
at
that.
crypto, right? So I don't know if they probably know whatever we would tell them already. Like, crypto is really interesting. Look at it, and they're doing that. So it's exciting because it's validation for the space. The future is that type of technology. So I think it's all good stuff.
Would you say you guys have learned from some of the crises that have come out of Silicon Valley lately as you build your company, including Facebook?
I think we learned a lot from our experience in crypto, more so in terms of like seeing the Mt. Goxes of the world implode and lose hundreds of millions of dollars of value. Like you learn really quick and hard. So I think there's a lot of carcasses on the road of crypto that I think we've seen and learned from and understood. And when Mt. Gox was having problems, a lot of people were going after trying to solve that problem, but they're thinking, oh, I can just build a technically better exchange. And it's like, that's one piece of it. It's compliance, it's regulation, it's security, it's product, customer service and support, all that stuff. It's not just a technical problem. At the end of the day, it's really a trust problem, and that's why we keep going back to the trust theme. It is a trust problem. Like, Bitcoin hasn't been hacked. It's never been hacked at the protocol layer. It's the companies that store Bitcoin and work with it that have problems because they're run by humans. So the math doesn't need rules, it's the humans. And we see that in every market. You need some kind of regulation to promote positive outcomes. So that it's just like marriage, just fine balance between the two. Yeah, and we built with security from day one. That was one of our things. Our third or second hire was our chief security officer.
Right.
So we built that foundation from day one. It didn't seem worth it to start a company and store people's value and lose that. We've engaged Deloitte to do a SOC 2 Type 1 report for internal controls. First ever exchange, custodian, and cryptocurrency to do that. We embrace regulation. We're like, we want to get regulated. I think that's good. We want to, help shape that. So yeah, like Cameron said, we learned from all the bad stuff that happened in crypto. Our own experience, we bought Bitcoin on Mt. Gox. We saw it happen. So we wanted to do this the right way. Again, I think that's that complicated. It's like, it doesn't seem like it should be that hard.
And there was a day when people didn't want to use credit cards on the internet. Literally, that was like a big concern. Like, are people going to buy books from Amazon with a credit card? It was a big debate, and that trust was built over time, and it's not built overnight. The crypto experiment, if you will, Bitcoin's 10 years old, just passed the 10-year birthday, I think, in October, but most of the projects like Ethereum are significantly younger than that. Gemini is 3.5 years old. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will be here before you know it. When we got into crypto, it was effectively nothing. The market cap of Bitcoin was $100 million. Today it's something. Tomorrow it will be everything.
So let's talk about that, because we're in a winter situation here. 2017 was great. Obviously, there was a huge growth and spike in Bitcoin and others. I wonder what's your assessment of the value of crypto right now? Where do you think it will be, say, by the end of 2019?
Well, when we were here in 2016, I think Bitcoin was at $400, and we actually gave Bitcoin to people in the audience who signed up with a code. And we gave $10 of Bitcoin. So today Bitcoin's worth $4,000. So that $10 is worth, $100 or $200. Am I doing math right there?
Yeah, it's been up 10.
It's gone up
now.
It's gone up 10 times. That $100 is So does it go up another 10 times? Are we here 3 years from now? Maybe. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's more likely than not, and very possible.
What about usage though? What about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies entering the mainstream? Is my little daughter going to end up buying all of her stuff in 10 years on Amazon with cryptocurrency?
Yeah, probably not with Bitcoin because it's more of a digital gold. Usually people, it's more of a store of value. People invest in gold, they hold on to it. It's like a share of Apple. You don't really spend it for a cup of coffee because then you're taking price risk on whether it goes up or down. You want to spend dollars. We've created the Gemini dollar, which is a stable coin, bringing basically dollars onto the blockchain. So your daughter could pay for her coffee with a Gemini dollar in the future. So it has more currency-like attributes because it mimics one-to-one with the US dollar. So Bitcoin doesn't necessarily have to be used like a currency to be successful. I think it already is. It may just disrupt gold, and that should be a pretty amazing thing.
That would be great news for the Bitcoin miners out there and all the communities that benefit from that. I want to know if you think that companies, retailers, banks are embracing crypto enough right now. Do you think that they're missing an opportunity?
I think a lot of them are in search for margins. Apple Store and stuff like that, it's like 30%. So a lot of merchants are getting squeezed, right, on certain platforms. Cryptocurrency may be the solution. So I'm sure everyone's looking at it, but I'm not sure as much as I would expect. But I think there's a lot of people, but you haven't seen it in action yet.
One area we find really interesting is e-gaming. We have like 200 million people playing Fortnite. That's a lot of people, and if you think a lot of people watch the Super Bowl, it pales in comparison to a lot of these game franchises. And you have people playing all around the world and buying in-game goods and digital collectibles and goods and things. And I think the intersection of crypto there could be very fascinating because getting payments is the hard part. Playing the game with anybody around the world, that's actually the easy part. So I think that's one potential use case, digital goods and collectibles. There's this thing called CryptoKitties, which really took off about in the last year. It's basically a digital cat that people were buying, and because it's on the blockchain, it's like the one and only version. And it is kind of fun. It's a fun thing, but it's a really amazing use case that people are actually buying digital goods. I collected baseball cards way back in the day. I have no idea if the baseball card I had, how many there were.
I collected Beanie Babies. That's way worse.
Yeah.
And you don't really know if it's finite or how many there are. With the blockchain, you can really, it's fixed. You have a truth that only a blockchain can really provide in that scale. And I think we're going to see a lot of things starting to move on the blockchain. And that's where a lot of people, I think, are getting excited, is the tokenization of different assets. Because if you think of gold, gold is not fixed in supply. It's scarce. People thought peak oil in the US happened in the 70s. There's this theory that it had peaked in the 70s and was kind of going down. And I think in the middle 2004 or 5, gold I think spiked up to $100, $120 a barrel. And then the fracking technology got way better, and oil has plummeted. And the US is an exporter of oil, and the prices are softening. And we've barely scratched the surface of the earth in terms of these commodities that are often used to store value and kind of transfer money. But the thing is, we will get better drilling techniques to mine, get oil, natural gas, gold. Somebody, Elon Musk, will probably start mining golds on an asteroid. It's already tunneling all over LA, which is like impossible. I mean, who would ever think you could solve the traffic problems in LA, right? Who's going to do it? So someone is going to put a probe up on an asteroid. There's trillions of dollars of gold and precious metals floating right above the Earth. So they're not really precious. The only thing that's truly precious, in my mind, is Bitcoin. And if you tell that to somebody who's my parents' age, they'll probably look at me and tell me I'm crazy, and I'm willing to accept that. But if you talk to someone who's playing Fortnite, say, okay, 2 options: bar of gold or the equivalent in Bitcoin. They're 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100 going to take the Bitcoin. They want software, they don't want hardware. They don't understand gold. they don't get it, they don't want it. And so that's the future that we think is going to happen, and that is happening. And we're just trying to be a platform in the middle, building trust and allowing individuals to get on the Gemini mobile app and buy the assets that they need. But in the future, our biggest customer base will be machines. And we will have, self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles, all that stuff, and they're going to be transacting value, and they're not going to roll up to a bank and get a bank account, though they might at Wells Fargo, but not at most banks. So there's no way around that. These devices will need to transact value, and they will be talking on networks, and they will probably be talking through companies like Gemini. The other thing that you cannot solve with the existing system, and this is the other inevitability, is there's 1 billion plus unbanked people in this world. 1 billion. It's crazy. I think there's 80 million unbanked or underbanked people in the US alone. So it's not like we've got everybody in the US covered. We're not even doing a good job here.
It's not saturated.
So, but with a crypto address and a smartphone, all of a sudden you're in the system. You can now access value and transfer value, and you start to become banked, and you're now online effectively. All these people are totally offline, shut out from banking, saving, credit, all of these things that are key to prosperity. And I think crypto is the only technology that we've seen that might actually solve that problem over the next 10, 20 years.
We have some questions coming in on Slido.com. By the way, guys, I neglected to tell you, and you obviously probably know already, but go to Slido.com, use the hashtag South by Southwest, and then click on or search for Salon H, and you can ask a question of Cameron and Tyler here. But let's start with this one right here from Michael. How do you think blockchain can work in a GDPR world? Good question, Michael.
You call my lawyer. It's going to work, right? Because the internet, Bitcoin, to stop Bitcoin or to change it, it's like you got to affect the internet. So, we're GDPR compliant, Gemini Exchange. We were in compliant, I think it was May, which we sent out user agreements and did sort of stuff like that. So it's fine.
Guys, you heard it here, it's fine.
It's not hard for us to be GDPR compliant.
Why not?
Because privacy and all customer access to data and things like that, like we've been doing from day one. We don't, so it's like, taking what we're doing in the US and making sure we're compliant with another, the GDPR regime.
It's every day for us. So we have all of the way we protect data for financial institutions in the US is not like a big change for us. It's very different if you're a social network or other things that was never regulated before and all this. So I think it's really built for a different company, and it really causes heartburn and brain damage for a different type of company. But it's business as usual for us because we've been in the financial track and been doing all this stuff pretty much already.
Another question here from, I can't really read the username, but is blockchain more a financial instrument or a tool for immutable transactions with or without payment?
So blockchain effectively is a ledger of value, and so if I send Bitcoin to you, that ledger just moves, and it's a public, decentralized, immutable ledger. And so that's the way we kind of view it. There are private blockchains, but that's a little bit different than public open blockchains that are permissionless and immutable that people can basically build on top of. You don't need permission to go and build on the Ethereum blockchain. You can go build whatever you want. That rug will not get pulled from underneath you. There's not a person, a Wizard of Oz, sitting behind a curtain that's just going to pull the plug on you.
Okay.
It's open like the internet. But a private blockchain, usually there's some, basically nodes or people that control that and can roll back the ledger. And that might make sense in certain applications, but it's not the type of blockchains that we're sort of think about and are most excited about, which is like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and like that.
Mike has a question here. What do you think about Lightning Network and scalability of cryptocurrencies in general, guys?
So we've got to work on scalability. That's like a real problem.
How do you solve it?
So there's lots of brilliant people that are working on scaling this in crypto. We're not going to probably solve that ourselves, but there's a lot of communities built around these protocols, and they're working on it and solving it. And it's the same way, you know, YouTube wasn't really possible before compression technology got better and you could start streaming at a reasonable enough quality. That wasn't solved by YouTube, I don't believe, or Google, their owner. It was solved by other people, you know, building around the protocols. So it just takes time. If you think of like the early internet, like you had the real player and it was like buffering, and you'd like watch an episode of South Park and every like minute it'd stop and like buffer again and then keep playing. And then YouTube is like crazy how good and fast and how much content. So the internet scaled for video. There was a time where literally just video didn't work. Was not a good experience. So Bitcoin's just the same, cryptocurrency is the same way. I think that, you know, there's enough people, smart people in the room where I think that problem will just get solved like other technical problems.
All right, so infrastructure. This is an anonymous question, what is your response to the common criticism of crypto that it's a haven for illicit activity like the Silk Road? Does this inhibit its mainstream ability?
Fake news. You know, look, all those people got busted, right? Silk Road got busted. The D agents that, you know, busted it actually got busted themselves. They took the Bitcoin. They tried to steal it themselves. So Bitcoin's really that place for dumb criminals. But it's it's a good place for dumb criminals.
Bitcoin is a bad place for dumb criminals.
It's where dumb criminals go to commit crimes.
And it's all tracked, basically.
Yeah, it's pseudonymous, right? So if I send the Bitcoin, the whole world can see that Bitcoin moving. So it's historically been a bad place. It's sort of like Venmo, doing something bad with Venmo. Yeah, it really wanna. Yeah, there's like college kids who paid their drug dealer in Venmo, and like the drug dealer got picked up, and they just followed with like all the connections. It was a really, really bad idea to do drugs. But it's a very powerful narrative, and it's one that, like a stain that stayed with Bitcoin for a long time. And even now, I mean, we're getting a question on Silk Road today, and that was busted years ago, and the perpetrator went to jail for life, and that chapter's been sort of long gone, but it stays, you know, it takes a long time to shake that narrative, as false or misleading or, you know, as it might be. People don't want to write like these long exposés on the trust, you know, the regular, like what people are doing. It takes a lot more time to sort of overturn that, but we're trying. Right.
There's a question here that's kind of pushing back on the concept of Gemini. A Bitcoin maxim, if you don't own your keys, then you don't own your Bitcoin. Shouldn't users own their own private keys instead of an exchange like yours?
Some people can, you know, you can store your private keys. It's effectively like a digital mattress, and you can get a Trezor wallet. It's like the form factor is the size of a USB stick, and you can store your private keys and take them wherever you are. Most people don't want to store their dollars in a mattress or their crypto in a Trezor. They want to store it in a bank, in a financial institution that they trust. And the cool thing about crypto, though, is you can have it both ways. If you want to store your own private keys, you can do that. If you want to use Gemini, you can do that. It's the same way, but you have that capability. In the existing financial system, if you don't use a bank, you're kind of out of luck. If you want to store real value, it's hard to store $1 million in your mattress. You're not going to sleep well at night. But in crypto, you can take $1 billion and put it on a device. You can even make a brain wallet with a seed of 16 words and carry $1 billion in your head very easily. So the system's sort of set up for either way, and I liken it to, you know, a SUV, sport utility vehicle. I'd say 99.99% of people who have SUVs have never gone off-roading and never will go off-roading, but they've got that capability if and when. If things, you know,
turns south and you need to make a run because the zombie apocalypse is upon you, and you gotta drive over that mountain or whatever, well, you've got your SUV, but for the most part, you're just driving around the city.
I mean, other than exchanges getting hacked, like the most common way people lose their Bitcoin is actually they screw up and lose their private keys. The password to the private key, like what's encrypting the private keys, they lose their laptop, they throw it away. There's as many stories of people losing Bitcoin because they store it themselves improperly as there are exchanges. So we just want to make this easy. If you go to Gemini.com or you go to the Apple Store, Google Store, download the Gemini app, you can buy, sell, store cryptocurrency, and it's as easy as using any other app. But you're totally welcome to do it on your own. But you know, we built Gemini to make it easier to get people in this, to make it easier to engage with the space in a non-mysterious way. It sort of feels like a regulated financial institution that you're used to. So that's what this was born out of, like our own dealings with the Wild West of Bitcoin. And storing our own private keys, it wasn't easy, as Cameron mentioned.
Most people can't secure their email account. Fact. So probably shouldn't be trying to store private keys that are long strings of digits. Yeah. Leave that to us. We'll do it.
Well, do you think though that exchanges like yours then, if they do get adopted by a more mainstream audience or users, do they actually pose a legitimate threat to regular banks? That's a question from Jan.
Not really. Different. We think
banks are getting into crypto too.
And we work with banks. Right. Yeah, we don't hold dollars because we're a trust company. We're not a full-fledged bank. So we use banks to hold dollars of our customers, and we like banks. We need banks. We partner with banks. We work with them all the time. We're not trying to be a bank. We're a crypto native company that sort of is this conduit between the existing world and this new world of crypto. And so we're really more trying to extend the financial system. We've taken dollars and put them on the blockchain in the form of the Gemini dollar token. So you can now send dollars anywhere in the world. That's like a new crypto native function, and I liken it to Amazon. There was a point when Amazon was competing head to head with Barnes and Noble.
It was a small point. Yeah.
The brick and mortar, bookseller that was started in the 1800s, and then Amazon was like the online. Who's going to win this out? One had the Nook, one had the Kindle, and we sort of know how that story played out. But Amazon's an internet native company. It didn't exist before the internet. It won't exist after, without the internet. That's really how we view ourselves in terms of the crypto. We're a crypto native company. So
eventually, yes.
Then. And banks can't really innovate at the speed of technology.
We've seen that with Wells Fargo
and they're not supposed to, right? It's a systemic risk if they're growing and innovating too quickly. Like the FDIC doesn't like it when a bank has more than 30% year-over-year growth. That's too risky. You're taking too much risk and growing too fast. But as a technology company, we have to grow that fast. So we're like trying to be the best of both worlds. But if we're an actual bank and take deposits, then that could curb a lot of our innovation and speed. So we really work with them, and we're very different business models. They take deposits and lend it out for more, and they make money on the diff. We're a technology protocol company. We help people buy, store, sell Bitcoin. We have mobile apps. Banks usually don't even have good mobile apps. So it's just we're different, but we work together. I think that was one of those things in the early days, like Bitcoin will kill banks, will kill fiat currency. Bitcoin may kill gold. So if Bitcoin's at 100 billion right now, and gold has a $7 trillion market cap, okay, what's that appreciation if it unseats it? But like, you can't go after everything, Like, I think Bitcoin and cash is really apples and oranges. It's like gold in a stock certificate. It's just a different instrument. So that's how we see it.
So you don't think that there's a question here from Zach, that is there even a real possibility for crypto to completely replace or overtake traditional means of payments here?
Well, I think that so traditional fiat has come into crypto in the Gemini dollar, right? We've wrapped dollars with a crypto wrapper called the Gemini dollar. So it's like, I think will traditional finance just like become crypto, right? Like, will the US government put the dollar on the blockchain? I think everything is going to move in this direction, whether it's companies like us do it or be a part of it, or help legacy companies sort of wrap their assets or their business and bring them on the blockchain. But like, this space is here to stay, and it's the future, and it's not just built for human-to-human type transactions, as Cameron said earlier. It's humans to machines, machines to machines, and that's going to happen. It's not an if, it's a when. It's happening now.
Yeah, the issue with the existing system is not the US dollar, it's that it's trapped in these legacy systems that are Byzantine and broken up, and there's a lot of middlemen and protocols that are ancient trying to talk to each other. It's sort of locked. If you want to send value from the US to the UK, London, for example, you have to use the SWIFT protocol. If you send it on a Friday, if you miss the wire cutoff, it's not getting there, till Monday or Tuesday morning. The banking system's 9 to 5, right? Imagine if your email shut off 9 to 5. I'd actually like that, but
There's some companies that mandate that.
Yeah. No, we're thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
Like no Slack Wednesdays.
Regulators shouldn't
No Slack Wednesdays.
I think it's a thing. We're really like Tyler's a big proponent of that, because you lose a lot of productivity because conversations, people are having Slack communications that they could just like walk over to another desk and hash it out in a more efficient way. And yeah, I think you might experiment with that.
That's interesting, a company culture where you are going to be limiting certain communication in order to foster. I mean, does that make the company work better, do you think?
It forced discipline. I mean, it's snail mail, you can't send it very effectively right now. If you email, like, do you send more emails like that are kind of gratuitous potentially, or unnecessary because it's just so easy? Yeah, it sort of can have diminishing returns after a while.
The challenge is
over communicate, right?
The challenge is you have to context switch so much. I mean, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. You're constantly getting pinged, for these little things, and it's hard to like batch communication and that type of activity when you're trying to, let's say, read some long form piece like a white paper, like the Bitcoin white paper. Maybe you need an hour to really digest that or something, and you're getting pulled in all these different directions. So it's a challenge.
But I think we're learning this, right? Like having Slack, having email, having text, having phone. This is new territory for humans, right? Just like all of our data being on the internet is new territory. So we have to understand, is this correct? Are we over communicating under, what's the right balance? And we're constantly looking to sort of optimize that and experiment with it.
And with education, you saw they brought a lot of computers into the classroom, and now people are like, get that out of here. Nobody.
Several Silicon Valley titans, if you will, who are like, no screen time for my kids.
Yeah, a lot of my friends who have young children have no screens in the house, and they won't for at least the first couple of years, maybe longer. So.
Well, that I think is a different panel topic. As much as I want to get into that world, I know we've got a bunch of cryptocurrency folks here. So let's go back to some of the audience questions. What do you think needs to happen for Bitcoin prices to recover to all-time highs and go beyond what we saw back in 2017?
I think more and more regulated infrastructure. We're seeing some, Fidelity recently is entering in the space. It's obviously a big brand. They've been around for a long time. There's other existing financial institutions that are exploring crypto. And then the regulatory front, getting more clarity. We've been trying to build the Virtual Commodity Association. We've been helping stand it up with other exchanges in the US, and it's an SRO to self-police our marketplaces and create rules and best practices that we can implement on the various different marketplaces where people trade, so that they're afforded the protections when you buy a share of Apple through your brokerage or whatever. So just initiatives and efforts like that, I think will get us in that right direction where people will feel safe to come in and place bets. Wall Street's sort of right at the gates, and some of Wall Street is in crypto. But there's that next wave where the real money will come in. And there's a report, Cambridge Associates, one of the big asset advisors, and they advise major pension funds and endowments all over the country. They recently basically issued a report on crypto, encouraging some of their clients to explore crypto and even buying directly on exchange, which is a huge development. I don't know if a lot of people kind of caught it because it's not as big of a headline grabber, but the people who understand Cambridge Associates and what they were saying, it's very big for Bitcoin. And I think you're going to see over the next 12 months, asset managers and endowments and these very conservative allocators and investors start to understand and potentially place bets in crypto.
If everyone downloaded the Gemini app and onboarded into Bitcoin, that would help.
It only takes under 2 minutes to onboard.
Well, people are wondering here, Wolfgang is wondering what's the difference with compared to Coinbase. It seems to do exactly the same as Gemini.
Good question. Great name, Wolfgang. We do a lot of things similar. We're New York based. They're Silicon Valley. We started off as a New York trust company early. So a little bit different approach, more institutional, I think. But we've started to flex our retail muscle more with the Gemini app, which launched only a few months ago. So, I think there's a lot of overlap, but the details are some of the details I said before, just sort of like very pro-regulation right out of the gates in our DNA.
Do you think that you're more trustable than Coinbase?
I think that's for the audience to decide.
I would assume your answer is yes, but it's for the Gemini guy. So.
I mean, it's really like we think we're trusted, but it's really
trustworthy, I should say, not trustable.
all of the above. We think we are, but I think it's about the perception of the customer and the client, and what they think. So I'd sort of push it to them. It doesn't matter what we think, really, right? Like maybe Mt. Gox thought they were really trustworthy. They thought they were worthy of people's business, but they weren't. So I think I'd rather let the facts and other people's perceptions sort of speak for our product, as opposed to like it's kind of cheap if we just sort of say this stuff, right?
What's the status? Brad is asking, what is the status of your ETF, and why aren't there more applications for ETFs that store actual?
So we don't currently have an application on file with the SEC. I think we filed in 2013, went through about 4 years of a process. We're still bullish on the ETF, and we're looking for the right time to potentially engage again. We think ETFs are not an if, but a when, and hopefully we'll be the person that's there first. But a lot of it goes around, the criticism that the SEC had for the market is that the lack of surveillance and rules-based approaches on the different marketplaces. So we're trying to address that with the Virtual Commodity Association and other efforts to address their concerns, because at the end of the day, they're trying to protect consumers. If someone buys an ETF and something goes wrong, that's on them. And once you let one ETF for Bitcoin go through, then there's going to be a lot of ETFs, both for Bitcoin, but also for crypto in general. So they have to get it right, and they're taking a very methodical, conservative viewpoint, and it may take years more, but I think it's worth it to get it right.
Right. What are the most interesting crypto apps today besides Gemini, and what do you think will be the killer app for crypto? This is from Satoshi.
Hey Satoshi. It's you. Where have you been all these years? It's you. I think Gemini is obviously a killer app. I think Bitcoin itself is a killer app, digital gold. I think we're in terms of the consumer mainstream killer app, we're sort of waiting for that. Is it going to be a decentralized Twitter, decentralized Facebook, decentralized Uber? What's that going to look like? I think it's still far off because we said that the scalability is not there. But it will probably be something that can't be done outside of crypto, but it's also like hard to predict. And that's the excitement of it. But I think it's coming for sure. I don't know how to ballpark the time, but inside of 5 years, it will be pretty exciting time to be here. And I think also other cryptocurrencies, Filecoin's coming up online. There's a lot of Ethereum type competitors like Tezos.
So you have Zcash, which is sort of like a privacy version of Bitcoin. And all of these things, all these different networks are sort of jockeying for position. There may be only a handful, there may be more than a handful. I'm not sure there's like room for 100 different like pure layer 1 protocols. But there's probably going to be more than one, similar to there's more than one currency people like. You can't be everything to everybody. You have to make certain engineering trade-offs. So like some may fill different, problem spaces, but it's still kind of a protocol game, and that's what we look at, and that's what Gemini does. It helps support them, and you can buy and trade and store the assets on the protocols. And the apps are coming, but I don't think it's quite there today, obviously.
Vivek is asking, you mentioned Bitcoin a lot as a value store. What about Ethereum and other currencies? I know you guys sort of touched on this earlier.
Yeah. So if Bitcoin's digital gold, Ethereum's like digital oil, so it's also, we put it in the virtual commodity bucket.
Right.
You might have heard of ICOs, which are sort of like the non-compliant security tokens, which have been rebranded to security token offerings, STOs. So those are like securities in a blockchain. So you have like oil, gold, securities, dollars with the Gemini dollar on the blockchain. So you're starting to see the real world financial assets. And then you're going to see things like buildings or REITs or other types of assets on the blockchain. So, they all serve different purposes. But again, I think that like Bitcoin can be used as a currency, but I think there are probably better alternatives, and that's how we came with the Gemini dollar.
This is an interesting question from Johnny. He's asking, average age of traditional financial advisors is 50 years old. Only 10% are less than the age of younger than 35. Who is going to be qualified to advise on a portfolio that includes various types of crypto?
Johnny. I know him. This is the same Johnny. Good question. People haven't really been waiting for advisor to be advised on these things. It's been, Wall Street's really not in the market, as Cameron said. It's really been a retail-driven market. Like the people have driven this forward, and usually they get stuff like after startup goes to Silicon Valley, raises money from Sand Hill Road, raises more rounds, and then it IPOs, and then they get that like 10 years after the company was founded, right? It sort of gets dumped on retail investors, but right now retail investors were the ones who are there day one. They've made a lot of return in crypto, and no one's really waiting around. It's really interesting. So like maybe there are some, but it's been, like the SEC is not sure already, but like the world is, and it's happening, and it's really powerful. So I don't know, like maybe millennials who are playing Fortnite are the most qualified to assess a portfolio and a white paper and read the cryptographic math and stuff like that, and
Sounds like maybe there's a market for it to become
Yeah,
a
like-
financial advisor in this new.
Maybe, and I think financial advisors are also going to have to understand crypto, or they will become dinosaurs or not be able to advise that well. And a lot of hedge funds are bringing on analysts and people who are experts in protocols. There's obviously the crypto hedge funds, the crypto funds. There's a few of them that are pretty well known, but there's traditional hedge funds that have people on staff now looking and reading white papers and trying to understand the technology. So they're bringing, yeah, it's totally happening.
Here comes the wave. We have a bunch more questions. We have 2 minutes left here, unfortunately, so I'm going to hit a couple more. Which countries, this is from Kate, which countries can access Gemini? A couple of Europeans are here in the room, were unable to download it. So this is an expansion question.
Yep. Yeah, so we are in the UK, but we are not in mainland Europe yet. We're working on getting a license there, so hopefully soon.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. We care about you. Don't go anywhere.
Ray has a good question. Do you see a problem with the cost of mining 1 Bitcoin being significantly more than the value of 1 Bitcoin? What if the spread gets larger?
I think what happens when it is not economic to mine, miners don't mine, they basically go offline. So it sort of self-corrects over time.
So to wrap this up, I just want to ask you guys one last question. As you look ahead, how much does the volatility, this current crypto winter, impact the future of your company and where Gemini goes beyond this mobile app and into perhaps the mainstream?
Well, I think we have to be disciplined on the projects we choose to pursue, and I think we have been through the history of the company. In 2017, everything looked like a good idea, and we didn't run after 100 ideas. We were very focused kind of on the core of what we were trying to build. But Gemini started in 2014 before License started building. We launched in 2015. In 2016, it was all about blockchain. Nobody wanted to do Bitcoin. A lot of people left Bitcoin. We kept our heads down. So Gemini's almost existed in more winter than summer for the most part. There was a time where just nobody was paying attention to it. And a lot of our earliest team members are still with the company today. So that's kind of how we think about it.
That's your indicator?
Just, we have one of our core values at Gemini is conviction, and another core value is the long game. We have conviction in this asset class, and we're playing the long game, and we're really, we say that we're building a centurion, a company that will last for 100+ years. We're not going for unicorn status. We think that follows suit. If you look at some of the greatest financial companies like JP Morgan, Bank of New York, State Street, they're 100, sometimes 200 years old. That's what we're trying to build, longevity and trust, and we think valuation will come with it.
Well, it's a strong projection into the future. Thank you for taking all of our questions here today. Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, thank you so much for being here.